Hi, morning everyone. Let us get this started. So, we had a comment actually early on that they can't believe it's August tomorrow. It is more than August tomorrow. It is Yorkshire Day tomorrow. But today we're going to be discussing a Yorkshire MP, Rishi Sunak, who seems to have lost his freaking mind. So let me explain what this is about. So we know that there's been a certain sequence of events. Oh yes, by the way, hello, it's not Graham this morning. He's having he's on his travels again, and his internet's a bit slow. Do you know what? Just to stop you getting confused, right? We'll do a half and half. There we go. Now, the ever since Uxbridge, it's like the Conservatives think, oh, motoring, that's how we're going to win the election. Never mind the fact that as a result, basically, Uxbridge for them was a collapse in their supports. They won it. They didn't expect to win it. Labour were expected to win it. But it was an absolute collapse in their support. So, but they've gone with it. They've gone, oh, we need to, this was, people saw it as an anti-car thing. We'll do it everywhere else. As if the rest of the country had the same issue as Uxbridge. And this has culminated. This has culminated in a newspaper front page today. This is actually The Guardian, which is not a Tory supporting paper, saying that Rishi Sunak is looking to attack 20-mile-an-hour zones. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to go through some. I've put a link to the article, by the way, in the description below. I want to point a few things out. First of all, so 20-mile-an-hour zones, right? Now, you get these in two places. First of all, as behind me, school areas. We like to give school children a fighting chance of making it to adulthood, right? So you have 20-mile-an-hour zones, typically outside schools. Now, when I was younger, I remember in the days when I used to watch television, I hate it now, but in the days when I used to watch television, I remember an advert that tried to, before 20-mile-an-hour zones became like, it was trying to persuade people to slow down outside schools anyway. And the advert tagline was that if you hit a child at 20 miles an hour, there's an 80% chance it will live. If you hit a child at 30 miles an hour, there's an 80% chance it will die. So, and ever since then, there's been a lot of now. I mean, I remember when not the school I went to, but the next one along, in the next sort of bit of town along, there was a 60-mile-an-hour road outside the school gates. Absolutely insane. In fact, there were there was a really weird split site school. So there were two sets of school gates. Outside one of them was a 40-mile-an-hour road, and outside the other was a 60-mile-an-hour road. It was like they were trying to kill them. But these days, it's quite common for a 20-mile-an-hour one. So straight away, the Tories are saying, well, we're not really keen on children surviving to adulthood. Well, those are your workers, you idiot. But the main reason for 20-mile-an-hour zones is actually because where I am, right, if I go out the close, there's a 20-mile-an-hour road. Then there's another one after it. That's the one outside the school. But the first one isn't outside a school. And it exists for the same reason that most 20-mile-an-hour zones exist. Because local residents have lobbied the council to have them because they don't like cars going too fast. Even if it's just like 25, 30 mile, 25 mile an hour is too fast. We want a 20-mile-an-hour zone. They're very popular with residents. And think about it. It's mostly residents who don't themselves drive. It's residents who've got the time to lobby the council. And it's residents who've got the inclination to lobby the council. Now, what sort of residents are we talking about here? Elderly, often conservative voting residents. So this policy is actually an attack not only on Tory councils, because I'm in a Tory council, 20-mile-an-hour zones everywhere, they've put them in. But also it's an attack on the sorts of voters who like them, who like to be able to go to the council and say, well, the cars are going too fast, I want a 20-mile-an-hour zone. right? So this is attacking his own voters. Now, I will point out, if you read the article, you may think, hang on a minute, are we sure about this, Phil? Because there's a part of the article, I've lost it now. Oh, yeah. It says here, so it's first of all, it's talking about the low traffic neighbourhoods. So Sunak has definitely come out against low traffic neighbourhoods, even though they're also popular. And I mean popular with those sorts of voters as well. It's absolute madness. But it says here in the article, while Sunak ordered the review into LTNs, the low traffic neighbourhoods, Number 10 said the Prime Minister had no plans to act on 20-mile-an-hour limits. So you're thinking, oh, well, you know, is this story accurate then, right? Because number 10 is saying, no. But a couple of things. Then it says the Department for Transport said it could not comment. Well, if Downing Street's willing to rule it out, why won't the Department for Transport? Then there's something else. Andrew R.T. Davis, for those who don't know, he is the Welsh Conservative leader, right? This morning, tweeting this. So he tweets a copy of yesterday's Sunday Telegraph, right, which is just talking about, I am on motorist side, says PM, as he orders review of anti-car schemes, right? Okay. But this is what he says. Meanwhile, he says, Andrew Davis says, this is leadership. He says, meanwhile, Labour continue their war on the Welsh motorists by banning road building and blanket 20-mile-an-hour zones. So Davis there is attacking, because by the way, in Wales, for those who don't know, the Welsh government, which is Labour, are making 20-mile-an-hour zones in certain areas standard. So there's a lot of them in Wales. So Davis is obviously having a pop at them. He doesn't like them. And he's getting on board with it. So the Welsh Conservative leader, he's certainly reading into this that Sunak is attacking 20-mile-an-hour zones. So it's like Downing Street say, no, we're not talking about that. Yet the Department for Transport can't rule it out. And the Welsh Conservative leader say, no, this is absolutely about attacking 20-mile-an-hour zones. And the thing is, and it's almost like they're going to get themselves... In fact, do you know what? Before I come to some comments here, let's look. There was a really funny response I had when I commented myself to him. Someone here saying, I had a letter through the door saying my area is going to be a 20-mile-an-hour zone due to levelling up fund. So the Tories are actually funding it. You couldn't make it up, could you? Right, let's go through a few comments before we carry on. Monsieur Jim Jam saying, I always go 20 in the 20 zones. If I had a penny for bad-tempered, impatient driver, get up my backside, I'd be a millionaire. I live in a Tory area as well. I mean, I always stick to the speed limit. But anyway, filling a Graham hat is confusing me. It doesn't take much. I thought I was doing it to avoid confusion. Will he re-announce grammar schools yet? Oh, they do that all the time. Oh, it's par for the course, that. New Conservative leader, oh, we should have more grammar schools. And then they don't do it anyway, because you know what, it costs money. Captain Bart Roberts, I live in a town with narrow streets. Unless I'm on a main road, I drive at well below 20 miles an hour. Have confused. Well, so yeah, I mean, I know this, we have those sort of roads around here. So yeah, for those sort of roads, obviously you're not getting up to that speed anyway. What we're talking about is like long, straight residential roads. And you'll get two types of thing. You'll get... See, the 20-mile-an-hour zones, I don't mind at all. Why would you need to drive that fast through certain residential areas anyway? Like, if it is the main road, that's different. But, you know, if it's just like a residential road that's not part of the main road through the village or town, you don't need to. But but you'll also get, like, the thing that does irritate a lot of drivers is speed bumps. You get plenty of those as well in Tory areas. Are they going to attack those? Are they going to attack the old speed bumps? Because arguably that would be a little bit more popular with drivers, but not necessarily the residents. And again, you think about the profile of these residents. They're essentially, you know, because they're people who've got the time to lobby the council and the inclination. So they tend to be retirees, which tends to be their target voter. So, you know, He's really barking up the wrong tree here. But the 20-mile-an-hour zone, it's almost like they've said they're going to do it, and maybe the reason why Downing Street is sort of saying no, we're not talking about this is because they're reconsidering now, because someone has maybe. It's like they've been drunk on it. They've Uxbridge. Oh, we won because of this thing, and it's like, yeah, but you still saw a massive collapse in your vote share. It's not like they got up to the, previous election results. They just won it. I mean, yes, ULEZ inevitably helped them with that, but it wasn't like a stunning, I can't think of words now, endorsement of this sort of policy. But it's almost like they've just thought to themselves, oh, it's cars. Cars is how we're going to win the next election. Oh, what can we say? Oh, and it's like they're making no attempt to understand that these are different schemes. The issue with ULEZ was not, it was entirely about the daily charge, which most of them won't pay anyway. They didn't realise that. That's what they're failing to understand. The reason why they got a lot of people voting for them on the ULEZ issue was to do with the charge, not ULEZ itself, the charge. Low traffic neighbourhoods do not charge you to drive your car. 20-mile-an-hour zones do not charge you. It's almost like they've just thought to themselves, oh, we need to get onto all of these so-called anti-car things without actually understanding what it was all based on. Oh, Captain Bart Roberts, £1 super chat. Thank you very much. Spank Flap saying, I normally avoid the 20-mile-an-hour roads because the speed bumps go down the next parallel flat road instead. Yeah, well, it depends where you are. Where I am, there is no avoiding. I don't need to go 30 mile an hour down a short residential road anyway. What about potholes? Another 1,000 on repairs for me this year. Oh dear. Yes, I mean, if they wanted to deal with that, but as far as that, see, it's quite weird, isn't it? Like they talked about that in the local elections. Oh, that's a local issue. We'll do that local issue. Well, these are local issues. What the government are proposing here, I mean, they won't do it, by the way. They won't do it. But what they're proposing is to take away powers from councils, because 20-mile-an-hour zones, they're down to councils. Councils deal with that. Nothing to do with the central government. Not to do with them. So if central government wants to interfere, it's going to have to change the law so that it can. But there we go. A hat's now de rigueur for Labour social presenters. No, it's just because I'm Graham today. I normally do it on Tuesday and Thursday. It won't be on tomorrow. I don't really know why it's on now. They will have just looked up things that annoy drivers. Maybe, but it's a small number of drivers. And the other thing as well is, so let's say you had this group of people, and again, I will emphasize that this is thinking empirically, but realistically, people are in favour of schemes like this. The sort of people that the Conservatives are targeting their voters. I mean, you think about like the southeast of England, the Tory suburbs, Oliver Dowden when he was talking about the privet hedges last year, these sort of places. You tell those people, oh, by the way, we're thinking about taking away your right to impose 20-mile-an-hour zones. They're not going to vote Tory because of that. But also think about this. When you go into a general election, see, a by-election's different. You can use your vote on a particular issue as a protest because it doesn't matter. When you go into a general election, you're voting for the government, right? And not everyone wants to or does, but that is what most people are thinking about when they vote. They're thinking, who do I want in government, right? So they are, you think about and there's lots of issues. They might have like 50 positions themselves, but they have to make a single choice. It's not a referendum on a single issue. Who's really going to make that vote based on, oh, they might get rid of that 20-mile-an-hour zone I don't like? And again, it's like, it's not realistic, is it? If you've got people struggling with the cost of living, the NHS is collapsing, crime is soaring, and someone's going to go to a polling station and go, no, I'll keep all the crap. I'll keep the collapsing NHS. I'll keep the cost of living. I'll keep the high inflation and my low pay. I just want to get rid of the 20-mile-an-hour zones. You're not going to do that. Absolutely ridiculous. It's utter desperation. And the best part of it, is that Sunak reckons he's going to take personal charge of this. Yeah? He's going to so he's going to be their front man on this. Not that he's got any choice, no one else wants to. I've people, has his advisor seen him when he takes personal charge of something? He's not really a very good PR person, is he? Do I ever think whoever's advising the Tory party is actually a Labour plant? Well, no. I think the problem is that they're not advised. Like, they don't have strategists working with them on a day-to-day basis. They are supposed to have political advisors. And I have said before, I don't rate their political advisors at all. I think Rishi Sunak has surrounded himself with people who are not very good at all. Right? And this does happen. In fact, interestingly in the news, there's quite a few bits of interesting news today. So they've chosen a replacement for Matt Hancock, because Matt Hancock's standing down at the next election. Not that he's got very much choice. So the Conservatives have chosen a candidate for that seat, someone called Nick Timothy, who was Theresa May's strategist for the 2017 general election. And a lot of Tory MPs blamed him for that loss. In reality, it wasn't his fault. It was Theresa May being, scared of the public. Mind you, there's plenty of other reasons to dislike him. But it's, you could still nonetheless argue he was not a good advisor. And it's the same thing here. I think Rishi Sunak has got very poor advisors. I mean, the simple fact that they thought it would be a good idea for him to take his seatbelt off in a moving car and talk to camera and then publish it online. That was one, there was at least one advisor in that car doing the filming, and it was like, what? But most of the time, you don't have your strategists working with you day to day. It costs far too much money and they've got other things to do. So it's mostly MPs doing it. Most of the day-to-day campaigning is MPs, and they're not very good. They don't understand anything. Does Rishi Sunak even drive? Yes, apparently he's got 4 cars. He goes on about the fact that he drives an aging Volkswagen Golf, but he's got other cars as well, including like a custom-built Range Rover, I think. So he's got multiple cars. Obviously, he's not going to drive himself around a lot on government business because you have a driver to do that. All government cabinet ministers do. But, when he's doing his own thing, he drives. When he's not taking a donor's helicopter, that is. Gary's saying, I'm a cyclist and all car drivers annoy me. No, I'm very considerate. I used to be a cyclist. No, I'm very considerate with cyclists. But again, I was talking to someone else about this, was it recently? It was on one of the streams somewhere. And they were saying, we should just get rid of all cars. It's like, well, do you think they're going to build roads just for cyclists? There'll be no roads then. But anyway. The car is king in my area, though you wouldn't know it if you saw the potholes in the main roads. Well, that's possibly why as well. But even so, people even if you've got some of these bizarre areas, the thing is, for a start, okay, I can put it really simply, actually, in terms of the strategy here. If you've got an area that has a lot where the voting power is it's the motorists using their voting power, you won't have many of these schemes anyway. Because obviously a council's not going to implement a load of unpopular schemes because they'll be out at the next local elections, right? So by definition, if you have low traffic or traffic calming schemes or something like that, by definition, they are the things that the council believes the local community wants, because otherwise they would lose. They would lose the next election. So if it was a vote loser, or put it this way, if it was a vote winner to get rid of these schemes, local councillors would stand on that platform and get rid of them when they won. So if it's not going to be so QED, really, QED, they are, where they exist, they're not unpopular. Because if they were, they'd be protests, and councils fold pretty quickly, because councils are very conscious of the need to not piss off the locals, because you know, MPs, they have safe seats and they have voters that will constantly turn out to vote for them, all the rest of it. Local councillors can't take things for granted. If they, you know, you only have to piss off like 100 people, and that could be you losing at the next election. So, yeah, it's Sunak's completely barking up the wrong tree here. If it was a vote winner to get rid of these schemes, the local councillors would be doing it. It's really not a vote winner. And the fact is, as well, in a local council election, you know, these are the sorts of things that are the issues. But in a general election, they're not. They're not at all. Tim Farron made a tongue-in-cheek comment about Liz Truss being a better Lib Dem plant and that Labour had a way to go to catch up with Lee Anderson as their plant. Well, maybe, yeah. Yeah. Someone's saying, just talking about emissions now, we're moving on to Murdoch saying, the main trouble with EV vehicles is a serious lack of charging infrastructure around the country. Yes, indeed. That needs, you know, and it particularly the further out you get from London and the southeast, like where I am, it's very poor indeed. In fact, there's nothing where I am at all. You know, as in where I am in the town I live in, absolutely zero charging points. So you need one. Not that it's not a big town; it's a small market town, like a historic town. But you need to get. So you're going to charge it at home, and that's it. You're not going to charge it anywhere else, basically. New Sunak drove a VW. Is defo the type to have a... What the hell is that? Don't know what that is. But yeah, yes. Oh, I'll tell you what the other funny thing was. So yesterday, he tried to do... Was it yesterday or the day before? But this weekend, he tried to do a bit of a PR stunt in Margaret Thatcher's old Rover. And he said, I was sitting here in Margaret Thatcher's Rover, and it's inspiring me to be on the side of the motorist. And so basically, all this has grown from an anti-ULEZ stance, right? So someone looked it up because Margaret Thatcher's Rover, you know, was up for sale. You can see the registration plate. You can type the registration number into the ULEZ compliance website thing to check if your car's fine. And although it's old, you wouldn't think it was ULEZ compliant. Actually, when they put the registration number in, they said, well, according to the information from the DVLA and Transport for London, actually it is. So he was sat in this car thinking to himself, this is the sort of thing that would be charged under ULEZ. So I'll sit in this car, and it's Margaret Thatcher's. There's that link as well. And I'll present these sort of my attacks on these anti-car schemes. And it's like, yeah, mate, that one's ULEZ compliant. If you have a driveway, then you have charging infrastructure. Yeah, what if you need to drive beyond the range of your batteries? That is the problem. It's fine for short hops, absolutely. No problem for short hops. But as soon as you need to drive a long way and there's no charging points on the way, that's the problem. But at the same time, if we're serious, then we need to expand that. I would expect under Labour we will see that infrastructure expanding quite rapidly. Because at the same time, you need to bring people on board with any policy. You know, no policy is good enough that you can implement it if you don't have people on board. So you need to make sure that you've got the that people can't really say, oh, but you know, it's not feasible where I am. It needs to be feasible everywhere. Maybe the very northern parts of Scotland may struggle, but you know. But even then, you know, you need to set up infrastructure everywhere. Gary's saying, I'm about 40 miles from London. The closest I've ever driven to London was Upminster. I don't even know where that is. I would drive nowhere near London, quite frankly. It's bad enough being in London. I do go occasionally. I'll be going again in September. But I couldn't even imagine even attempting to drive into London. How far's a long way? Most EVs can do 200 miles plus, well, like 300 or 400 miles. You know, every now and then I do journeys of that length. So, Outer Hebrides, Norway, stuff like that. Okay. Oh, are you talking about what? Outer Hebrides with the Norwegian link? That's the council who wanted to join with Norway. Is that a reference to? Cars should be like Dodgems where there's a roof with electricity on it. Problem solved. I'll tell you what is interesting though. This you wouldn't get you enough power from this, but there are materials which can generate electricity from heat. So you know there has been a bit of a notion if you create casings around exhausts and things like that, you can generate not enough to power the car, obviously, but you can generate a little bit. You know, just because it's all it is using a particular material. You know, so there's various things you can do to make it more efficient. You say ULEZ zones discourage classic car ownership. Well, for poorer people, yes, not for wealthier people. For wealthier people, even $12.50 a day is not, you know, great. So you could say for poorer people, sure, but at the end of the day, the reason it's being done, it's not like an ideology. It's to save people's lives. People die from breathing in NOx gases and so on. So, I mean, ultimately, it's like what's more important, that someone can live to adulthood or beyond, or that someone gets to drive around in an E-type Jag more cheaply. Because no one's banning the car, by the way, although at some point that may need happening. How does my head keep clipping? Because I don't use a green screen, I use a VCam. And it's very confused by the hat. But we're nearly done. So here we go then, William. But this is the issue, isn't it? We did a 400-mile round trip in our EV a few weeks ago. Infrastructure's there, but could be improved. You just plan your journey around 1 hour stops. But this is the thing, isn't it? If someone's not that sold on it, it's like, so what I have to do, right? If I need to make a journey down to Suffolk or something, I just get the postcode I need. I don't know why I said Suffolk. I've never driven to Suffolk. But I just get the postcode I need, type it in. That's my planning. That is my planning. Whereas now you're talking about a much more sort of military operation where you have to work all these things out. And that's the problem. Most people are going to go, well, I'm not going to do that. So you have to stop that being necessary. You have to make it the case, like in a petrol car or diesel car, whatever, you know that as long as you don't let it run empty, you're going to pass petrol stations at some point. So on some motorways, it might be 30 miles between them, but you're going to pass one. Whereas if you don't know that is the case with charging areas, and also if it takes too long, granted the cells now that are being developed will charge much more quickly. But so that's what you need to do. You need to make sure that we've got the fast charging cells. You need to make sure the infrastructure is there so that people don't have to plan it. It will just naturally be there. They'll just take the journeys and there will be points where they can do it. That's what needs to happen. And the government can easily do that. Yes, I think in 5 or 10 years' time, the technology will be such that all of the inconveniences will be swept away. But, you know, you think about it, at the moment, an electric car costs double a normal car of the same basic type, pretty much double in many cases. And this is talking about electric, not just hybrid. And then you've got, you know, you've got the extra inconvenience with it as well. People aren't, you know, you need to make it commercially viable. You need to make it attractive for people. I don't think you'll need to ban any cars. They'll just decline in popularity. That impact will be minimal. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Because classic cars are in themselves, very few people, you know, have the wherewithal or money to. Because when I say, you know, in fact, unless you're a motor mechanic yourself, just maintaining a classic, like a real classic car, takes a lot of work. I mean, next door to me, there's a fella who has an American, like an old Second World War era American Jeep and American Army truck. He's working on it all the time. It takes constant maintenance. So if you don't know what you're doing, you're paying a fortune for that sort of thing anyway. What's a £12.50? And it's only every day you take it out. You don't necessarily take your classic car out every day. It might just be a weekend thing. Perhaps if you're correct that it won't affect many people, they should introduce a period before ULEZ expands where people can check what they need to be paying once it's introduced. They already have. They already have. This was announced years ago. Years ago. We're coming up to the next mayoral election. It was at the last one where it was in the manifesto. So people have had years. And do you know what? If you've got someone in Uxbridge that had a Tesla that was going, I don't want to pay the charge, then it's just possible that people aren't finding out. So in actual fact, no, that is an argument to do it as quickly as possible so that people can see when they go out and they're expecting the charge. It's like, oh, there's no charge. You know, and it doesn't even need each individual person to discover this. Their neighbour will say it. Their neighbour will go, I went out and I thought there'd be a charge and there's no charge. And then I went on the thing and it turns out there's no charge for my car. Oh, I don't think there'd be a charge for your car either. It'll get about. This has been... Sonic Khan didn't decide to do this a couple of months ago. It was years ago. Years ago. So if people have not already discovered this by now, then there's no hope for them. You just have to immerse them in it, and that's all there is to it. But anyway. Right, we'll leave it there. We've gone into another direction there as well, hasn't it? We've run out of time anyway. But thank you very much for coming on. Don't forget to click the like button as well as to subscribe to the channel. And you can find, if you want to read the article I was referring to today, that is in the description below as well as details for Patreon. But thanks very much for coming on, everyone. Have a good day. And until tomorrow, as it happens, I'll see you later.